The giant space station floated in the darkness like a jewel. Inside, the council chamber was filled with aliens from across the galaxy. Some looked like crystals that could talk. Others were balls of light. A few had too many arms or eyes. All of them were old, powerful, and used to getting their way. Captain Daniel Hayes stood in the center of the room. His blue uniform was clean and pressed. He had traveled for 3 months to reach this place. Next to him stood Ambassador Lisa Grant. She was smiling, but her hands were shaking just a little bit. They had come here with hope. They had come here to join the big family of space civilizations. "Your request is denied," said the Volthar delegate. Its voice sounded like breaking glass. "Humans are not ready to join the Galactic Council." Daniel felt his chest tighten. 3 years of work. 3 years of meetings and travel and paperwork. All gone in one sentence. Lisa stepped forward. Her voice was calm and professional. "We have met all your requirements. Our technology is advanced. Our people are peaceful. We have colonies in the frontier zones that are doing well." The Cassian delegate floated higher. It was a being made of pure energy inside a glass ball. "You are children," it said. Its tone made Daniel angry. "You belong in the outer rim. Maybe in 1,000 years we will look at your request again." Daniel wanted to argue. He wanted to shout. But he knew it would not help. The decision was made. These ancient aliens had decided that humans were not good enough for them. They would stay in the outer rim, the wild places where pirates ruled and colonies disappeared without anyone caring. As they walked back to their shuttle, Lisa finally spoke. "We failed." "No," Daniel said. He looked back at the beautiful station. "They failed. They just don't know it yet." The shuttle lifted off and headed back toward human space. Daniel watched the council station grow smaller behind them. His mind was already working on new plans. The outer rim was supposed to be a punishment. The council thought humans would struggle and fail out there. But Daniel saw something different. He saw opportunity. Back on Earth, the news spread quickly. People were angry. Some were sad. But President Helen Price saw the same thing Daniel had seen. She stood in front of the world government and gave a speech that would be remembered for generations. "The council has rejected us," she said. Her voice was strong and clear. "They think we are not good enough for their inner worlds. They want us to stay in the forgotten places, the dangerous places. Well, I say we show them what humans can do when we are underestimated." The crowd erupted in cheers. Helen continued. "The outer rim needs strong people. It needs brave people. We will go there not because we were forced, but because we choose to. We will build something the council has never seen before." General Victor Kane was already making plans. He was in charge of the new Outer Rim Defense Force. If humans were going to survive in the lawless territories, they needed weapons and ships and smart strategies. The Outer Rim was full of pirates and raiders. There were alien criminals who preyed on weak colonies. There were asteroid fields that could hide entire fleets. It was not a safe place, but Victor had an idea. "We don't fight like the council races," he told his officers. "They use big ships and old tactics. We'll be fast. We'll be smart. We'll use every advantage we can find." In the shipyards orbiting Mars, construction began on a new type of vessel. It was not as big as council warships, but it was faster. It had better computers, and it used jump drive technology that humans had invented themselves. The council races still could not figure out how human jump drives worked so quickly. Meanwhile, diplomats were reaching out to other species in the outer rim. Not all aliens loved the council. Some had been rejected just like humans. Others had run away from council laws they thought were unfair. The outer rim was full of refugees and outcasts. Lisa Grant took charge of these missions. She traveled to mining stations and trading posts. She met with Theron refugees who had fled persecution. She talked to Vex merchants who operated outside council control. She even negotiated with Kresh pirates, though those talks were tense and involved a lot of weapons pointed at each other. "We're all in the same situation," Lisa told them. "The council doesn't want us, fine, we don't need them. But we do need each other." It was a simple message, but it worked. Slowly, carefully, humans began building relationships with other Outer Rim species. They traded technology for resources. They offered protection for information about safe routes through dangerous space. They learned from aliens who had survived in these regions for generations. Daniel was given command of a new ship, the Guardian. It was one of the first vessels built specifically for Outer Rim operations. He took it on patrol through human territory. making sure everyone knew that humans were serious about defending themselves. On his first real mission, they found a small human mining colony under attack by raiders. The raiders had 3 ships. The Guardian was alone, but Daniel did not hesitate. He used the Guardian's superior speed to separate the raider ships. He targeted their engines, not their crews. When it was over, 2 raider ships were disabled and the 3rd had run away. The miners were grateful. But more importantly, word spread. Humans could fight. Humans would protect their own. And humans did not back down from bullies. 6 months after the Council's rejection, humanity had established 12 new colonies in the Outer Rim. Each one was fortified and defended. Each one had supplies and equipment to survive independently. And each one was connected to the others through a communication network that the Council could not intercept. Daniel stood on the bridge of the Guardian, looking at a star map. Blue dots showed human settlements. They were scattered across a vast region of space. It did not look like much yet, but it was growing. "Captain," said his communications officer, "we're receiving a request from a Theran colony ship. They want to know if they can settle near our station at New Haven." Daniel smiled. "Tell them yes, and send them our defense protocols. Anyone who wants to live peacefully in the Outer Rim is welcome near us." That was the beginning of something new. The Council had cast humans aside, expecting them to fade into obscurity. Instead, humans were building something the galaxy had not seen in thousands of years. They were building a community based on cooperation instead of hierarchy. They were building strength through unity instead of conquest. The Outer Rim was changing, and the Council was too busy with their own politics to notice until it was too late. 3 years had passed since the Council said no to humanity. The Outer Rim looked completely different now. Where there used to be small human camps barely surviving, there were now big stations and growing colonies. Humans had not just survived. They had started to thrive. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Guardian. He was looking at the newest station called New Haven. It was huge. Construction modules were still being added to it, making it bigger every day. The station floated in front of a beautiful purple cloud of space dust that glowed in the light of 3 nearby stars. "Commander, another group just arrived from the Kepler settlement," said Lieutenant Amy Walsh. She was working at the communications station. "They want to join our network," Jake nodded. The network was what everyone called humanity's system of connected colonies and stations. Every human settlement in the Outer Rim was part of it. They shared defense plans, trade deals, and most importantly, they all used the human jump gate technology. These gates let ships travel instantly between stations. The Council races still had not figured out how to copy this technology. "Let them in," Jake said. "Send them the security rules we use." Humanity's success was not just about being stubborn, it was about being willing to learn from everyone. The Theron people, who had run away from the Council, taught humans how to make better metal for ships. The Vex traders shared maps of safe routes through dangerous areas. Even the Kresh pirates, after losing several fights against humans, started to respect human territory and leave it alone. Captain Nicole Barnes was in charge of the patrol fleet. Her job was to make sure human space stayed safe. Her squadron of fast attack ships were built in factories orbiting New Mars. These ships used technology from all over. They had energy shields that humans had made better using their knowledge of electricity. They had plasma weapons that were improved versions of Cassian designs. And they had those amazing jump drives that could do math in seconds that took Council ships hours to figure out. Nicole was on a normal patrol when her tactical officer spoke up. Lieutenant Chris Baldwin looked worried. "Captain, we have a problem. Someone is sending a distress call. It's a Melner colony ship. They're being attacked by Vax raiders. The attack is happening 12 light minutes from here." The Melner were connected to the Council, but just barely. The big Council races did not treat them very well. They were seen as less important, almost like second-class citizens. Nicole did not think twice. "All ships, get ready to jump in 30 seconds. We're going to help them." Her crew looked surprised. One officer asked, "But Captain, they're not part of our alliance." "Doesn't matter," Nicole said firmly. "We don't let people die when we can help. That's something the Council does, not us." The jump was instant. One moment they were on patrol. The next they were in the middle of a battle. The Vax raiders had surrounded the Melner colony ship. They were preparing to board it and take everything valuable. Then Nicole's squadron appeared. The raiders were shocked. They had expected an easy target. Instead, they faced coordinated human tactics and weapons that were better than theirs. The human ships moved like they were dancing, each one knowing exactly what the others would do. The battle was over fast. 3 raider ships were floating in space with dead engines. The rest ran away as fast as they could. The Melnor captain called Nicole's ship. His name was Thorvin, and he was old for his species. His voice shook with relief and confusion. "You came to save us? But we are not your allies. We barely know you." Nicole smiled at the screen. "Out here in the Outer Rim, we have a simple rule. We don't leave people to die just because they're not officially our friends. That kind of thinking is what the Council does. We're better than that." Thorvin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Thank you. I will not forget this." Word about the rescue traveled fast through the Outer Rim. Humans had saved a Council-connected species without asking for anything in return. They had risked their own ships and people for strangers. This was unusual. Most species in the galaxy only helped their own kind or people they could profit from. Within 2 months, 6 different alien species asked to join humanity's Outer Rim Coalition. That was what people were calling it now, the Outer Rim Coalition. It was not just humans anymore. It was a real alliance of different species working together. The Council noticed. Of course they did. But they said nothing publicly. What happened in the Outer Rim was supposed to be beneath them. They ruled the important parts of the galaxy, the wealthy core worlds with their ancient trade routes and rich planets. Why should they care about what happened in the frontier? This attitude was a huge mistake. But they would not realize it for years. Jake Morrison watched the coalition grow from his position on New Haven Station. More aliens were arriving every week. Some came to trade. Others came to settle. A few came running from trouble in Council space. All of them found the same thing. Humans who treated them with respect and an alliance that actually kept its promises. "It's amazing," Amy Walsh said one day. She was off duty and standing next to Jake, looking out at the ships moving around the station. 3 years ago, we were nobody. Now look at this." Jake nodded slowly. "The Council thought they were punishing us. They thought the Outer Rim would break us." He smiled. "They gave us exactly what we needed. Room to grow without their rules holding us back." Meanwhile, back on Earth, President Helen Price was meeting with General Victor Kane. They were looking at reports from the Outer Rim. "We're stronger than anyone expected," Victor said. He pulled up charts showing military strength, economic output, and territory controlled. "The coalition now covers more space than some Council member territories. And we're still growing." Helen studied the charts. "What about threats? The Council won't stay quiet forever." "There are always threats," Victor admitted. "Pirates, raiders, and now we're hearing that some Council species are looking at our space with hungry eyes. The Vothreen especially. They're a Council member race and they have a big military. Can we handle them if they attack?" Victor thought carefully before answering. "Alone, maybe not. But we're not alone anymore. We have allies now. Real allies who fight beside us. Not like the Council system where the big species give orders and the small ones obey." Helen smiled. "Then we keep building. We keep growing, and we keep showing the galaxy that there's a better way." On the edges of human space, outposts were reporting strange activity. Ships were watching them from a distance, taking pictures, measuring defenses. Daniel Hayes, now promoted to Admiral, read these reports with concern. "They're planning something," he told Nicole during a secure call. "Someone is going to test us soon." Nicole's face on the screen was serious. "Let them come. We're ready." But neither of them knew just how soon that test would arrive, or how much it would change everything. The Outer Rim Coalition had grown bigger than anyone imagined possible. What started as humans trying to survive had become something the galaxy had not seen in centuries. It was a real alliance of many species, all working together as equals. No one was in charge of everyone else. No one was treated as less important. Admiral Karen Foster stood in the command center of Frontier Station Alpha. She was watching a holographic map that showed all of Coalition territory. Blue markers showed where humans lived. Green markers showed colonies of allied alien species. Yellow markers showed independent stations that the Coalition protected. There were hundreds of them now, spread across an enormous area of space. "Admiral, we have a big problem," said Commander Luis Mendoza. His face looked worried and angry at the same time. "The Vothreen are making their move." Karen felt her stomach twist. The Vothreen hegemony controlled the border between Coalition space and Council territory. For months, Spies had been sending reports that the Vothreen were preparing for war. Now it seemed that war was coming to Coalition space. "Show me what's happening," Karen ordered. The map zoomed in to show the Harrow sector. 15 Vothreen warships had crossed into Coalition space. They were heading straight for Outpost 7, where human mining colonies were located. The Vothreen were a council member species. This was not just some random attack. This was the council testing the coalition to see if they would fight back. "They think we're weak," said General Patricia Hughes. She had just walked into the command center. "They think because the council rejected us, we can't defend ourselves." "Then we need to teach them they're wrong," Karen replied. Her voice was cold and determined. "Patricia, get the Third Fleet ready to move. Luis, contact Captain Ryan Brooks and his carrier group, and I need to talk to the Coalition Council right away." Within just a few hours, humanity's military was moving, but this time humans were not fighting alone. Melnor heavy cruisers joined them. Theran fighter wings prepared for battle. Even Kresh mercenaries, who usually only cared about money, volunteered to help. The message was clear to everyone in the galaxy. If you attack one coalition member, you attack all of them. Captain Ryan Brooks commanded the carrier ship called Defiance. He was leading a strike force of 40 ships toward the Harrow sector. His fighter pilots included both humans and aliens. They had trained together for months. They knew how to work as a team. "The Vothreen fleet is waiting around Outpost 7, reported Lieutenant Sophie Chen from the tactical station. "They're trying to contact us." "Put them on screen," Ryan ordered. The Vothreen commander appeared. He looked like a big reptile with scales and sharp teeth. His expression was what might pass for a smile among his people. "Human ships, you are outnumbered and outgunned. Go back home and we will let your colonies surrender peacefully." Ryan leaned back in his command chair. He wanted to look relaxed and confident. "Here's what's going to happen instead. You have 10 minutes to leave Coalition space. After that, we stop being nice." The Vothreen commander looked genuinely surprised. Then he got angry. "You dare to threaten us? We have the authority of the Galactic Council. We are acting with their permission." "That's interesting," Ryan said. His voice got harder. "The Council was very clear that the Outer Rim is not under their protection, which means it's under our protection. You have 9 minutes now." The Vothreen did not leave. They were too proud. For thousands of years, they had been backed by the Council's power. They could not imagine that these upstart humans and their ragtag alliance could actually hurt them. So they opened fire first, targeting the human vessels with powerful energy weapons that should have destroyed Coalition shields easily. They should have, but they did not. The Coalition shields held strong. Human engineers had spent years improving shield technology. They absorbed the Vothreen attack while Coalition ships moved into their planned positions. Human military tactics were all about speed and accuracy, not just brute strength. The Vothreen fleet was designed for the kind of big, slow battles that Council militaries preferred. They could not adapt fast enough to human tactics. Ryan's fighter squadron swept through the Vothreen lines like a swarm of angry bees. They targeted weapons and engines, not trying to destroy ships but to disable them. The Melnor cruisers hit the big Vothreen ships with plasma cannons that glowed bright blue. The human destroyers were smaller than Vothreen warships, but they could move much faster and turn much quicker. They cut through the enemy formations like sharks swimming through a school of fish. In just 1 hour, 5 Vothreen ships were floating dead in space. Their engines were destroyed and their weapons were offline. The rest of the Vothreen fleet turned and ran back toward Council space as fast as they could. Not a single Coalition ship was destroyed. A few had damage, but nothing serious. The victory was complete and shocking. News spread across the galaxy in hours. The Council held an emergency meeting, but they did nothing. The Vothreen demanded that the Council punish the Coalition for attacking Council ships, but the Council stayed silent. They knew the truth. The Vothreen had started the fight. They had crossed into Coalition territory, and they had lost badly. In the Outer Rim, humans and their allies celebrated. This was not just a military victory. This was proof that they mattered. Proof that they could stand up to Council species and win. Admiral Daniel Hayes watched the celebrations from his office. He felt proud, but also worried. "This changes everything," he said to Karen during a private call. "The Council can't ignore us anymore." "No, they can't," Karen agreed. "The question is, what will they do about it?" The answer came faster than expected. Within days, new species were asking to join the Coalition. Some were small independent groups. Others were actual council member species who were unhappy with how the council treated them. They had watched the battle and seen something important. The coalition protected its members. The council only protected the species it considered important. Thorvin, the Melnor leader whose ship Nicole Barnes had saved years ago, spoke at the Coalition Council. "We have decided to leave the Galactic Council completely. We want to become full members of this coalition. You saved us when you did not have to. You fought beside us when we had nothing to offer you. This is what a true alliance looks like." The Coalition Council chamber erupted in cheers. It was a huge moment. A species that had been part of the Galactic Council for hundreds of years was leaving to join the coalition instead. Back on Earth, President Helen Price gave another speech. This one was broadcast across all of coalition space. 5 years ago, the Galactic Council told us we were not good enough. They said we belonged in the forgotten places. They were wrong. We did not become great by copying them. We became great by being better than them. She paused, looking directly into the camera. To any species watching this, whether you are in the Council or independent or anywhere else, know this. The Coalition welcomes all who believe in equality and cooperation. We judge you by your actions, not by how old your civilization is or how much power you used to have. The speech was heard on dozens of worlds. In Council space, on planets where species were treated as less important, people started asking questions. Why did their government not protect them like the Coalition protected its members? Why did they have to follow rules made by ancient species who did not understand their problems? The Great Galactic Council, which had ruled for 10,000 years, was starting to crack. And humanity, the species they had cast aside, was the reason why. The victory over the Vothrine changed everything. The political map of the galaxy was being redrawn. Species that had been quietly watching humanity's rise now wanted formal alliances. Independent colonies that had stayed neutral were asking to join the coalition. And most importantly, council member species were starting to ask difficult questions about their own governments. Director Nathan Price was the head of Coalition Intelligence. He gave his report to the Coalition Leadership Council with mixed feelings. The council chamber had been built inside an asteroid at the heart of Coalition space. It was safe and secret. Now it hosted representatives from 12 different species, all sitting together as equals. "The Galactic Council is breaking apart," Nathan explained. He highlighted areas on a star map. "We're seeing protest movements on 6 council worlds. They all want reforms. The Melnor leaving the council to join us has inspired others. And our trade routes are now more profitable and safer than the council's old traditional lanes." Ambassador Claire Mitchell had taken over for Lisa Grant after Lisa retired. She addressed the coalition leaders with concern. "We need to be careful here. The Galactic Council has been stable for 10,000 years. If we push them too hard, too fast, we might start a war that nobody wants. But if we don't push at all," said Thorvin, the Melnor representative, "their corruption continues. Species suffer under their system while we thrive in ours. How can we ignore that?" The debate went on for hours. Everyone had opinions. Some wanted to be aggressive and recruit more council members. Others wanted to focus on making the coalition stronger before challenging the council directly. But the debate was interrupted by urgent news from council space. President Helen Price was in her second term now. She had become a symbol of human strength and determination. She read the council's new message with barely hidden disgust. "They're calling for an economic embargo against the coalition. Any species that trades with us will lose all council privileges. They're trying to strangle us economically." General Victor Kane was older now, with gray hair and deep lines on his face, but his spirit was still strong. He slammed his fist on the table. "Let them try. We make better technology than half their member states. We have resources they can only dream of, and we're not dependent on their ancient trade lanes anymore." He was right. The coalition had become economically independent. Human manufacturing methods combined with alien resources had created an industrial base that rivaled anything in council space. The jump gate network allowed instant transportation of goods across all coalition territory. And human innovation, free from council regulations and red tape, had led to breakthrough after breakthrough in science and engineering. Admiral Daniel Hayes, now a hero of the Vothrine conflict, proposed a bold plan. "We don't just survive their embargo. We turn it into an opportunity. Every species they pressure becomes a potential ally for us. Every restriction they impose proves our point about how they operate. The coalition's response was brilliant. Instead of retreating and hiding, they expanded their trade offers to neutral systems. Instead of closing their borders, they opened them wider. And most importantly, they began broadcasting the truth about council politics. They showed how the inner circle of ancient species kept all the power while newer members were systematically marginalized and ignored. The information campaign was led by a human journalist named Laura Stevens. She made documentaries about life in the coalition versus life in council space. These videos went viral across the galaxy. She showed thriving colonies where humans and aliens worked side by side as equals. She interviewed refugees who had fled council persecution and found acceptance in the Outer Rim. She exposed the corruption and favoritism that infected council governance at every level. One particularly powerful documentary focused on a Zephon family. They had lived in council space for 3 generations, always struggling, always treated as inferior by the ruling species. Then they moved to the coalition. Within 2 years, they owned their own business. Their children went to schools alongside human and Melnor and Theron children. When Laura asked the father what the biggest difference was, he got emotional. "Here, nobody cares that we're Zephon," he said, tears in his eyes. "They only care that we work hard and treat others fairly. My children have opportunities I never dreamed possible." The council would say we're ungrateful. But how can you be grateful for being treated as less than others? The documentary was watched by billions across the galaxy. On council worlds, protests grew larger. On independent worlds, support for the coalition increased. And on Earth, humans watched with pride as their values spread across the stars. The embargo lasted 6 months before it started to fall apart. Smaller council members were desperate for the advanced technology and fair trade that the coalition offered. They began making secret deals. Then the deals became less secret. And finally, 3 species formally quit the council to join the coalition. The ancient edifice of galactic governance built over millennia was crumbling. And humanity, the species that had been cast aside as unworthy, was at the center of the transformation. The council tried other tactics. They sent diplomats to coalition worlds, trying to convince species to return. They offered special deals and lower taxes. They even offered some minor reforms. But it was too little, too late. The coalition members had tasted real equality. They would not go back to being second-class citizens. Admiral Karen Foster watched all of this unfold from Frontier Station Alpha. She had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Coalition Forces. It was a big responsibility, but she handled it well. Her biggest concern was not military threats anymore. It was managing success. "We're growing too fast," she told her staff during a meeting. 6 new species want to join this month alone. "We need to make sure we don't lose what makes us special. We're not trying to become the council. We're trying to be better than them." Her words were wise. The coalition set up a formal membership process. New species had to prove they believed in equality and cooperation. They had to show they could work with others. And they had to contribute something to the coalition, whether it was technology, resources, or knowledge. This careful approach kept the coalition strong. Every new member added value. Every new member truly believed in what the coalition represented. It was not about power or prestige. It was about building something better together. Meanwhile, in council space, panic was setting in. Half of the council members had left or were seriously considering it. The ancient species that had ruled for so long were losing control. They called emergency meetings. They made threats. They offered concessions. Nothing worked. Finally, the council did something unprecedented. They requested a formal meeting with coalition leaders, not to give orders, not to make demands, to negotiate, as equals. When the message arrived, the coalition council chamber went silent. The mighty Galactic Council, which had rejected humanity's application so dismissively just years ago, was now asking to talk. The irony was not lost on anyone. "What do we tell them?" asked one of the coalition representatives. Daniel Hayes stood up. His voice was quiet but filled with conviction. "We tell them the truth. We tell them that things have changed. The Outer Rim isn't the edge of civilization anymore. It's the center. And if they want to be part of what we're building, they're welcome to apply, just like everyone else." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some thought it was too harsh. Others thought it was perfect. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity had come a long way from that day in the council chamber when they were rejected and dismissed. The cast aside had become the leaders. and the galaxy would never be the same. 5 years after the embargo failed, the galaxy looked completely different. The Galactic Council still existed, but its power had disappeared like smoke in the wind. Half of its former members had left to join the coalition, or to form their own independent alliances. The ancient species that had ruled for thousands of years found themselves increasingly alone, holding on to old glories while the galaxy moved forward without them. The Coalition Council chamber had been expanded twice to fit all the new members. Now it hosted representatives from 37 different species. At its head sat not a single ruler or emperor, but a rotating council of 5 leaders elected from member species. Right now that included Admiral Daniel Hayes representing humanity's military branch. "The council has requested a formal meeting," announced Ambassador Claire Mitchell. Her voice was calm, but everyone could hear the significance in her words. "They want to negotiate a treaty with us." The chamber exploded with noise. Everyone was talking at once. The idea of the mighty Galactic Council requesting anything from the coalition would have been impossible to imagine 10 years ago. It would have been like a mountain asking permission from a grain of sand. Daniel stood up and the chamber gradually became quiet. His hair had turned gray at the sides. Years of conflict and responsibility had added lines to his face, but his eyes still burned with the same determination that had carried humanity through its darkest days. "We all remember when they cast us aside," he said quietly, but his voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "When they told us we were not good enough for their company. They wanted us to die in the Outer Rim, forgotten and irrelevant." He paused, looking around at all the different faces, human and alien, young species and old ones, all sitting together as equals. "Instead, we built something better than they ever had. Not a hierarchy where some rule and others obey, but a real community where everyone matters. They forced us into the wilderness and we made it bloom with life." "So what do we tell them?" asked Thorvin. His people had thrived since leaving council control. They had gone from being treated as inferior to being respected partners. Daniel smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was confident. "We tell them the truth. The Outer Rim isn't the edge of civilization anymore. It's the center of something new and better. And if they want to be part of what we're building, they're welcome to apply for membership, just like everyone else has to do." The treaty negotiations took place on neutral ground, a space station in the buffer zone between Coalition space and Council space. The Council delegation was led by the Volthar Prime Minister, the same being who had dismissed humanity's application all those years ago. The Council representatives looked smaller somehow. Their ancient confidence had been replaced by cautious pragmatism. They knew they were no longer in control. "We propose a mutual recognition agreement," the Volthar began. Its crystalline voice was more humble than before. "Council space and Coalition space separate but cooperative. We acknowledge each other's sovereignty." Ambassador Claire led the Coalition delegation. She shook her head firmly. "That's not enough. Your people are suffering under an outdated system. We've received applications for Coalition membership from 6 more of your species just this month. How long before there's no council left at all?" The Volthar seemed to shrink slightly. "What do you want from us?" "Reform," Claire said simply. "Real reform. Open your borders. And the hierarchy where some species matter more than others. Allow true democratic representation for all member species. Basically become what you should have been all along. Become fair." The negotiations were difficult. They lasted for months. The council representatives would make offers, the coalition would reject them, and they would start again. Sometimes the talks almost broke down completely, but slowly, painfully, the council began to accept reality. The old ways were finished. They had to change or cease to exist entirely. The treaty that finally emerged created something unprecedented in galactic history, a true federation where every species, regardless of how old their civilization was or how much power they used to have, had an equal voice. The council and coalition merged into a new government structure. Some of the ancient species refused to join and isolated themselves in their own small territories, but most accepted the new reality. 10 years after humanity's rejection, President Helen Price stood before a joint session of the new Galactic Federation. She was in her final month of office, about to retire after leading humanity through its greatest transformation. The chamber was enormous, filled with representatives from over 100 species. At its heart were the principles that humanity had fought so hard to establish: equality, cooperation, and mutual respect. We didn't ask to be cast aside. Helen said. Her voice was older now, but still strong and clear. We didn't want to fight for our survival in the lawless territories beyond your protection. But you gave us no choice. She paused, her gaze sweeping across all the assembled delegates. Humans, Melnor, Theron, Vex, even a few Vothreen who had broken with their old government, all of them listening to her words. What you meant as punishment became our greatest gift. In the Outer Rim, we learned that survival required unity, not dominance. That progress required innovation, not blindly following tradition. That strength came from diversity, not uniformity. Every species had something valuable to contribute. Her voice grew stronger. You forced us to prove ourselves, and we did. Not by becoming like you, but by becoming better than you. Not by copying your hierarchy, but by rejecting it completely. And now together, we have the chance to build a galaxy worthy of all its inhabitants. Not just the ancient and powerful, but everyone. The chamber erupted in applause. The sound echoed through the station and across the communication networks connecting 100 worlds. It was the sound of change, of hope, of a future that was genuinely different from the past. On Earth, in a small apartment overlooking the Pacific Ocean, an elderly Lisa Grant watched the broadcast. She had tears running down her face. She had lived to see humanity go from rejected supplicants to architects of a new galactic order. She had been there at the beginning, standing next to Daniel in that council chamber when they were dismissed, and now she was seeing the end of that old system. In the shipyards of Mars, workers from a dozen different species labored side by side on the next generation of vessels. They combined the best technology and knowledge from across the Federation: human jump drives, Melnor metallurgy, Theron energy systems, Vex navigation computers. Every ship was a symbol of cooperation and shared purpose. And in the Outer Rim, where humanity had been cast aside and left to die, the lights of 1,000 thriving colonies burned bright against the darkness. They were a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who refused to accept that their place was anywhere but among the stars. The Outer Rim was no longer the edge of civilization. It was the birthplace of something better, a future where no species would ever be cast aside again, where potential mattered more than ancient pedigree, where the measure of a civilization was not how long it had endured, but how much it could grow and change. Humanity had risen not through conquest but through perseverance, not through domination but through cooperation, not through becoming like the Council, but by showing there was a better way. And in doing so, they had transformed not just themselves but the entire galaxy. The species that the Council had dismissed as children had grown up, and they had shown the galaxy itself how to mature. The cast aside had become the cornerstone of something new, and the light that had been kindled in the forgotten territories of the Outer Rim now illuminated all the stars in the sky. Daniel Hayes, now retired from military service, stood on a balcony on New Haven Station. He looked out at the busy traffic of ships from 100 different worlds, all of them coming and going freely, all of them part of something bigger than themselves. We did it, he said quietly to himself. We actually did it. And somewhere in the darkness of space in the former Council territories, the old ways were dying. Not with violence or war, but with the simple realization that there was a better path forward, a path that had been shown by the species everyone had underestimated. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of the Federation had begun. And it all started because one species refused to accept rejection as the end of their story.